Hi everyone! Today I want to tell you about one unique lens. This is the Laowa 35mm with f0.95 aperture, which is thus the brightest lens of such a wide angle of view. So I got the idea to check how good it is in low light conditions and compare it with the Sony G-Master 24mm 1.4. Now I am attaching it to my Sony a7S II, thus combining the brightest lens and one of the most sensitive cameras. All that remains is to find low light conditions appropriate for such a mighty combo. To find myself in the thick darkness, I had to go outside my city and overcome several kilometers away from its lights. Also, I specifically chose a night when there will not be a full moon, because the full moon gives too much light, so it would be too easy a task for my crazy low light setup. That's why I waited for the moon to get to its last quarter phase. For the last quarter is about 19 times dimmer than the full moon, and this, in my opinion, is a real challenge for my gear. Yes, very few know that half moon in its final quarter is so many times dimmer as compared with the full moon. Here we can see how much brighter the moon, stars and sky become, with ISO increasing compared to what can be seen with the naked eye. I decided to use clear image zoom here, so that the lunar disk should be better distinguishable, but this leads to a higher noise level, since the image is taken from a smaller area in the middle of the sensor. So I have set the maximum settings for the best light sensitivity, and now you can see what it looks like. Yes, ISO 100 and 2400 is not the highest ISO available on the Sony a7S II, but I should say anything above it looks too bad. But the most important thing in our walk is the sky. Just look at how many stars become visible with our exposure settings. Just a fascinating sight. A great many stars of different brightness and different shades. Just see them shining in real time. Look at the Pleiades. I like the way the Laowa lens pictures stars at its widest aperture, 0.95. To my mind it looks a kind of fancy and expressive. Bright objects stand out very well, so there is no need to use a soft filter with this lens. And this bright little blurred cloud in the middle is nothing more than the central part of the Andromeda galaxy, also named as M31. But besides the spray of stars that night, there was something else interesting in the sky and unusual for our latitude. That was Aurora Borealis. Actually, it was very faint and almost invisible, so I noticed it by chance in the camera viewfinder. That was my first time of seeing it alive, because it very seldom appears on the 54th latitude. And it was so peaceful and quiet all around. By the middle of the night, the moon had risen higher, and the surroundings had become noticeably brighter. Here we can see the Orion constellation and also a little meteor. The illumination created by the moon in its last quarter is approximately 0.01 lux, but here it is most likely slightly higher due to the light pollution of the night sky from the city, which is only a few kilometers away from this place. I think it might be about 0.02 lux. The light from half moon is very dim, very soft and I would say very gentle. It does not outshine the stars, saving their beautiful rich scattering in the sky. To show how much brighter half moon in its first quarter than in the last, just for comparison, I will show the same place taken on another night, when it was lit by the moon in its first quarter. And again, the illumination here does not exceed 0.03 lux. The sky was a little cloudy this time. It's amazing that the camera is still capable of shooting in such darkling conditions, although at the limit of its capabilities. Combined with this brightest lens, the Sony a7S II turns into a pretty good night vision device that gives out a significantly brighter picture with more details and colors than what a human can see with the naked eye. As you can see, there are no leaves on the trees, and there is also no grass or flowers, because it is the middle of the spring, when the snow has already come off, but the foliage has not yet begun to bloom. It looks like there is someone in that barn with the green roof, although it was not until I looked into my camera when I realized that the roof was really green. And now look at this plaque. We can clearly see the text on it as well as its color, but without the use of the camera it was impossible. It simply looked like a blurred dark square. To get an idea of how dark it really was around there, I brought down ISO value here. Even a fully adapted to darkness human's eye can only distinguish the blurred shapes of the surrounding objects in such conditions. Because, as we know, there are two types of photoreceptor cells in our retina, cones and rods. The latter are much more sensitive, but they cannot distinguish colors. That's why we see so faded picture in low light conditions. Let's return the ISO to the previous value, and again we can see everything clearly and vividly. Now let's compare the illumination created by the first quarter and the last quarter of half moon in the same place. When compared side by side, the difference in illumination becomes visible, and we see that half moon in its last quarter gives noticeably more light. Also, I would like to show you how much brighter Laowa 35mm at 0.95 as compared with Sony 24mm G Master at 1.4. To my surprise, even at the same aperture 1.4 on both lenses, the Laowa 35mm turns out to be noticeably brighter. Let's have another look. The Laowa is so much brighter at 0.95. Then close it to 1.4. All the same, it is a little brighter than the Sony's G Master lens. Well, I have gotten to say Laowa 35mm f0.95 has the best light transmission I have ever seen and stand half-moon light conditions, unlike Sony G Master 1.4. I am very impressed. Finally, I'm gonna show some photos taken with this lens and the Sony a7S II that night.